Okay, good morning. Uh, my name is Percy Sechemane. I'm the Chief Executive of TCTA, the Trans-Caledon Tunnel Authority. And we are welcoming you here in terms of the earlier brief, just to show you what is happening between Lesotho and South Africa in terms of water coming from Lesotho into South Africa. The significance of this particular point is this is what we call the Ash River outfall. So the water that comes via the tunnels from Lesotho actually comes through that tunnel, and you'll get an opportunity. We'll try to take you in groups for you to actually see getting into the tunnels how the water is coming from Lesotho to this side. Of course, there's no water that's flowing. I wish I had a before and after photo, so you'd see when the water is here. This is usually brimming with water that comes from Lesotho now going into South Africa. But the significance of this particular point, as you can see behind me, this is actually depicting the size of the tunnel. I know when you are in there, you don't actually have an appreciation of the size of the tunnel. So the capacity, if you look at it, is such that you can actually drive inside. I think you can see, even if you are not using a mini, you can actually get in and drive in there. So we'll try to get you to see what is happening on the side. The earlier site that we went to, we said we call them adits. This is entry into the actual tunnel. What we are doing is through the minister has given the directive to TCTA. The tunnel, it's one tunnel linking Lesotho and South Africa. So on our side, we are responsible now for operating and maintaining the size of the tunnel. So that is why we are here. There is the point that you've seen there, which is the middle one. This one is the one now where the water comes into South Africa and then goes all the way via Velge and some of those other rivers until it gets into the Vaal. So this is that part that we wanted to show you, because now there's no water, but we need to go in there, and you've seen some of the work that is being done, because we have to, every 5 years, we go into the tunnel. Last time we were in the tunnel was in 2019. We were doing maintenance work, but also determining in the next 5 years, what are we going to do? So the scope of work was determined in 2019. But as we do inspections, if we find that there are things that needs to be done immediately, we do them immediately. So the earlier presentation, for those of you that were there, I did explain as well that this is the longest one. Every 5 years we've been doing it, I think starting from 2003. Before 2003, the tunnel was still quite fresh and new, so we didn't have to do a lot of work. But at this stage, we've been doing it every 5 years, but because it's now getting older, we are actually refreshing it, because maintenance of this tunnel is very, very important. If you look at the number of people that actually, I mean, there's about 3 or 4 provinces, primarily Gauteng, and the other provinces that are getting water from the Vaal River via the Vaal Dam. All of it is coming from here. This is the point of entry into South Africa. So you can actually see, and now we're doing phase 2 of the Lesotho Highland water project. It's now, we are building something called the Pudihadi Dam. But the way we are doing it, we are not going to have another site like this. We are still going to use this one. So you have Katsi, people in the Free State, but it's called Remedia di Hlaba, where we are looking at the Katsi Dam, and then the water comes from here. But now we are building another dam. But what we're doing is we are also tunneling, like we have here, to actually get to this particular infrastructure and then still come through here. In that way, we are able to save money for the ultimate users of water, because we know that water is a right in South Africa. It is enshrined in the constitution, so all of us are quite responsible for making sure that this happens. But we are also aware that if we don't do maintenance, we'll be in trouble, because then you will have infrastructure that, I think if you look at the replacement value versus maintaining the infrastructure, it's much better to look at it, maintaining it. I know it's a bit painful in certain areas, but we've tried with the direction of the minister and the deputy ministers, and also I think in terms of the province and also the mayors, to work together in terms of saying, how do we ensure that this infrastructure remains intact, and when it's due for maintenance, we can actually maintain it. So the whole idea of bringing you here is actually to see how far we are with the core side of what we do. But there's also the other side where we are now talking about how do we ensure that during the 6 months when there's no water flowing, as you can see, we still have people that are having water. We've been very lucky that it has started raining, and I'm hoping that it will still continue to do that. But as far as the main works that we're doing, they are inside the tunnel, so we are not affected by that. So it's a very complex thing where we need to now work also with our counterparts in Lesotho, because we have to do it at the same time. And for them, it's not only looking at water, because there is a hydropower station. They call it the Muela hydropower station. The water passes through Muela as well before it comes into South Africa. Other people were asking, but why are we as South Africa now allowing Lesotho to also now get to generate electricity as we do this? And my answer has always been simple. It's good when each one of us are depending on the same project. There's no reason why Lesotho would say, no, we're not selling water to South Africa. They are actually getting money through royalties, but as well, they are generating power. So it's in the interest of the two countries to make sure that this works. That is why we have that kind of relationship with them, to make sure that from South Africa's side, we are benefiting with security of water. Our country is not known to have a lot of water itself. Lesotho has an advantage in terms of the mountains. You know, they can actually have snow, and then this is the source of the rivers as the water comes through here. And there's about 4 countries that are involved, starting with Namibia as well. They are what we call riparian states that are along the river. So there is also other commissions where we actually engage with them, even in terms of the amount of water that we need to share as Southern Africa. So if there's, I usually talk about the peace index. Water makes sure that all of us can work together, and it's very important for us, because as South Africa, we don't have a lot of sources. So it's very important that even the message that we send out there actually depicts the importance of this. But as you look at it, you'll start also understanding the costs that get involved. And I know a lot of people, some say, but it's raining, why do we have to pay for water? But this will give you an idea of the amount of money that we spend. And there's a lot of money that we also pay as royalties to Lesotho to get their water coming in into South Africa. So I wanted just to give this overview so that we understand the significance of what's behind us. And during construction, we can see there's a plug there. We actually lost 3 lives just during construction. These things happen, but I think over time, we're now much better prepared, and I think even our legislation is now tighter in terms of how we are managing and making sure that we are not losing lives. But it is what has happened at the time. This was in 98 when they were actually finalizing this whole thing. And part of this is, it looks like it's just water coming out, but we are using what we call tunnel boring machines. We are doing blasting, and then we get special machines that go and bore through the mountains, underneath the mountains, to make sure that we can get the water this side. So this is just what a brief that we wanted to give as well, so that you understand the significance of this part. I always say our stock, in terms of the whole project, it's really dependent on this side. This is where the South African side, we see that water coming from Lesotho and then going into the rest of South Africa. Then it will go into some of the water boards like rainwater for Gauteng and those areas. The difference here is downstream. We talk about the Vaal River system. It's made up of about 14 dams, this particular system, as we call it. Now, downstream, it's easier in terms of ensuring that the security of water. Per annum, we push around 780 million cubic meters of water. But just before October, the beginning of October, we pushed around 700 megaliters, as we call it, of water. Then the 80 million was what now we were looking at having other plans for some of the municipalities here, like Clarence, because they are getting it directly from Lesotho. But downstream, those dams, then we can hold the water. The deputy minister earlier was talking about the size downstream, especially in terms of the Vaal Dam, where rainwater obstructs the water, being at 33%. And we always say there's no problem. It's because what we've stored is still sitting in those other dams. And then in terms of our operations, we wait until we get to about 18% before we release the water. But the reason why we don't is because then you have to use electricity now to push the water out of the dams like Sterkfontein Dam, which we are using as a facility to store water. So there's a lot of engineering that went behind how we do this thing, to the extent that it makes more sense to say no, we still have enough water downstream, but it's about what we do upstream here, where we still have to engage with the municipalities to say how do we ensure that during this period there are no problems. So in short, that's what the brief that I wanted to give. So we will actually see what's in here, but ultimately we'll also have to go to the third audit, because that now would represent what happens on the South African side until you get actually even closer to the. So if you get in it, you can actually even go to the other side, but we'll try and maintain our peace as well and not go into another country. I've heard what the deputy minister has said, but we have to be quite responsible for that. So we will allow you to actually have a feel. But it's very dark in there and there are pressures. So please follow the people that have been directed to tell you how and what to do once you are in there. Thank you very much.